Are you tired banging your head against the wall trying to get Fldigi up and working correctly? Well, you need to watch this video. In today's video, I'm going to break down the 3 most common failure point areas: the Windows setting, the software setting, and the rig setting. And hopefully these suggestions, as well as some good tips, will help you be able to get Fldigi up and working properly, as well as getting maximum use out of it. So if this sounds of interest to you, let's get started. Hey, this is MJ, call sign KW3KW, and welcome to another episode of Ham Radio Made Simple. I'm continuing the series on ham radio for prepping, and this is episode number 9, and I'm focusing on the digital HF modes. This is part 7, a lot with Fldigi, troubleshooting setup for Fldigi. Now, if you want others to find this video easier and faster than you do, then go ahead, hit the like and the subscribe button, and hopefully YouTube will be kind and bring it up a little bit easier in the search functions. So today's agenda, I'm going to be going over Windows settings, the common failure points that you're going to find there, rig settings, Fldigi settings, Fldigi tips, and then just a quick summary wrap up. So let's get started with the Windows setup. There are some common Windows failure points when you're trying to set up Fldigi or just in general any of these digital modes that are out there today. I'm going to take you through Device Manager and walk you through where you should make an adjustment or change your baud rate. I'm going to walk you through a device cleanup tool that I use that cleans up all the garbage that's in Device Manager. Makes it a lot easier when you're trying to look for the right selection for your microphone and speaker in the software. And make sure that you be aware that with FLRig current version as of today, if you're using the Silicon Labs latest version of their drivers, it's not going to be compatible with FLRig, and you're going to have to basically download an older driver. I'll walk you through that. I'll get into basically a lot of the sound systems, whether it be the USB codec or the plug and play. One's internal sound card, the other one's for an external sound card. And talk about the speaker level, which is your transmission, and your microphone level, which is your received levels. So again, you're not going to use my numbers. Every rig and everything is set up completely different. But now that you're aware of it, this is an area you can go in and play around with to get optimal settings and optimal performance when you're using these different digital modes. So let's go ahead and open up Device Manager. One of the first things we want to do, as I call it, low-hanging fruit, is let's look at the Device Manager. So let's go down to the Start icon, right mouse click, go up to Device Manager, and we're going to pull up the Device Manager. And sometimes you won't even see ports, and you'll be missing things, maybe even such as your sound video game controllers. Portable devices is often missing. So just go up under View, Show Hidden Devices, and hopefully that solves the first problem if you can't see it at all. Next, if you're using an internal sound card like I am, you're going to see the USB audio codec, basically, is what you're seeing. So this is my COM port for my internal sound card to my ICOM 7300. If I was using my FT891 and I have to use my DigiRig, it would basically pull up the Silicon Labs and it'll show the same thing, but it's going to say PNP plug and play, so USB plug and play. And it's going to have 2 choices. It's going to have enhanced and standard. You want to use the enhanced versus the standard. So make sure you're using the enhanced version of this. But simply what we're going to do is just right mouse click. And we're going to look under Properties. And we're going to look under this. Obviously, it's working properly under Port Settings. And you want to make sure your baud rate here is compatible with what's in your rig and what's in the software that you've set. They all have to match. So we want to put that in there and hit OK. I can also, if I wanted to, is to go under my audio here, and I'm also seeing now the microphone is the USB audio codec, and the speaker is the USB audio codec. And again, sometimes if it's not showing, make sure you show the hidden devices. I can also go down to, let's see in here, a sound in here, and USB audio codec is all working properly in here. So again, just something to look at what you're trying to do right in here. So device manager looks good. And if you don't know which one it is, best thing to do is to turn off your rig and turn it back on and see which ones pop up. Now, sometimes you can get a lot of garbage in here, and I've done it because I've downloaded too many drivers or the same driver repeatedly, and it's a mess. The second thing we want to look at is a device cleanup tool. So I'll leave that over, just kind of minimize that for now. And I'm going to pull up my device cleaner right in here. And how did I get this? Well, if I go back to, let's go to my browser here. If I go to download clean devices, okay, this is called the Device Cleanup Tool 1.2.1. Now, anytime you download stuff like this, buyer beware, you have to do your own due diligence, do your research. For me, I went over to, for example, and looked at Norton Safe website and said, okay, this place is not, screaming, hey, they put malware or viruses in the software that you're going to download. So it seems legit. Do your research, make sure. I trusted it. You'll have to decide if that's good for you. So I went ahead and I downloaded it, and what I got after through the downloads, which I'm not going to walk you through, is something like this. So what you would do is go to File with Device Cleanup Tool, and the link will be in the description below if you want to do this. You want to restart as administrator. And it's going to ask you, do you want this app to have control? So I restarted as administrator. If you want, depending on if you pay, you can actually create a system restore point, which I would recommend if you can do this. For some reason, mine, it doesn't do it, but other people says it works for them. That's a safer way of doing it. Devices, select all. So go under devices, select all. And under devices again, remove selected. And I can close this out. And if I go back to device manager and I pull this up, it cleaned up all of the garbage that was back in here. So if you look under, especially under your USB serial bus controller, now you're not going to see as much garbage in there as you probably saw a long list. If you guys have never done this before, I kind of do this about every couple of weeks just to keep it clean. You can do what you want, do it once and done, never do it. It's up to you. But just an option, a way to clean that up, and it'll help you in a section here in a little bit. I'll show you here. So pretty much done with the cleanup tool. So we're done with that. Next, we're going to get into is if you're using an external sound card, you want to make sure you do not launch. And let me go ahead and launch. Okay, I got Fldigi launch. If you go under configure dialog, under auto start, do not have FLRig start at the same time as you have Fldigi. Just was talking with another ham radio operator last night. He was having issues with his FT891 in a mobile environment. And this was the source right in here. And I told him to unenable this. Make sure that's not going on. You don't want this happening. You want to launch FLRig cleanly first and then launch Fldigi. And all of a sudden now it would work. Because what was happening is it would connect, and he was able to, be able to use rig control. Everything worked. But when he hit the send, there was nothing going across. The rig would not engage. So yes, it looked like rig control was working properly, but he could not actually transmit power from his rig. This fixed that area up. So hopefully that'll work for you. One last thing, and always remember, hit the save anytime you make any changes in this whatsoever for the close. And another shortcut tip in here, you can go up to configure and save config before you leave, or I have mine set up to ask for it before when I close out the system, save your configurations. If you don't have that enabled within Fldigi, go ahead and make sure you always do the configure, save configs, and the last thing that you were on, it'll bring it right back to it also. So nice little tip on that one. But the other thing I want to go back to is here. If you're using, again, an external sound card with an Fldigi application, so I'm using I'm using my FT891 with DigiRig. One of the things I found was that if you use the latest Silicon Labs drivers, as of today's date, which is the 1st of February 2023, if you're using 1.4.7 on FLRig, it's not compatible. So you have to go back and download an older version of Silicon Labs. And you can either do it through the ICOM site, or you can do it through the Yaesu. Now, I use both Yaesu and ICOM, and either one of them works. So what you want to do is simply go down here is to the FT891 USB driver virtual COM port, install that, and now go ahead and launch FLRig, and you'll notice now if you are having a driver issue with it not working, this will solve the problem there. So again, just another issue that can be happening is sometimes the newest drivers are not compatible with FLRig application. I'm not sure if it's much of an issue if you're trying to do a direct connection from an internal sound card. If anyone's having problems with that, let me know. But just to be safe, if you are, go back to an older version, just like Windows. Sometimes Windows, you have a problem, you have to go back to an older version of it in order for it to work. And some of these updates just screw everything up. So simple as that. And so if you know how to use the site, just pick your model here. And like I did the FT891 and went under Files. And I went down to the bottom. So that's all you need to do. Next, what we're going to do is look at sound cards. So I'm going to go back down in here to the Windows Start menu. I'm going to go to Settings right here. I'm going to go to Sound, first Systems, Sound, and over on the far right side, you see over here it says Sound Control Panel. I'm going to go ahead and click that on, and I'm going to look, and it should be showing. Let me go down in here. There's my speaker's USB audio codec, so it's ready. So I'm going to right mouse click this, and I'm going to go under Properties. Now yours could say, USB plug and play, whatever, but you can open it up. One of the things you might want to look at is your levels for your speakers. I find it's better to drop it down to about 75. And I can actually use my arrow buttons at this point and bring it up to 75. Under enhancements, make sure they are disabled. Disable all enhancements. Hit apply. Hit OK. And I kind of do the same thing for under the recording at the top here. So when you think about it, when we're looking at the speaker levels, that's your transmission. We're looking at the microphone levels, that's your receiving. So recording is your microphone levels. Again, I'm going to go down. I'm going to look under my microphone, USB, right mouse click, go under Properties, look at Listen, Levels. Okay, levels, I have mine about 54, and I found that works pretty good for me. But these are two areas a lot of people just don't realize have an impact on it. So you make sure that you want to go ahead and with the speaker to the USB audio codec and to the microphone to the USB audio codec, make sure you adjust your levels accordingly to what your rig and your setup works. 54 works for me, may not work for you. So again, another area to focus on to tune in and make sure you get the best performance out of all of this. Again, okay, back out. And pretty much that should do it as far as sound card adjustments. When it comes to rig settings, it's absolutely essential that you get it correct. And if you use the FT891, the Yaesu, and the ICOM IC7300, you want a copy of my settings. It's like in a Word or PDF document. Just go ahead and request it at hamradiomadesimple@gmail.com, and I'll gladly send it. I've sent a lot of this to people all over the United States and even Hawaii recently. So go ahead and make that request. The USB data sometimes can change. I know more on the ICOM 7300. It's pretty rock solid on the FT891. But this sometimes when I change from like 20 meters to 40 or 80 meters, it'll go from upper sideband to lower sideband, or it won't stay in the data mode. Again, pay particular attention to this when you're operating, as well as within the frequency panel within Fldigi itself. Make sure that you turn up your notch filters, your noise blanker, noise reduction, your preamp. As far as your automatic gain control, it either could be fast or off. You can play with it and see which one works better for you. And finally, on the ALC, adjust as needed. And here on the ICOM 7300, you can see it's too high. It really needs to be down probably about in here. As you can see, it's correctly set within the FT891. So again, make sure that your ALC is set to 1/3 or less. So next, let's jump into the Fldigi settings. Some of the common failure points when we get into the Fldigi settings is the sound settings. Either you didn't pick the right device or you did and come back later on, and for some mysterious reason, it changed on you. But when we look at internal sound card, it should look like this. It should be the microphone and speaker showing the USB audio codec. External sound card is going to show something like USB plug-and-play sound device. So that's what you should see. And sometimes you're choosing the wrong COM port can make a difference. And it gets confusing with external sound cards because it's going to present two. And you're going to see here, for example, there's an enhanced and a standard. Always go with the enhanced version when you're doing it. And just remember the COM port. Now, another area to worry about is when you get everything set up and you hit the transmit button and it looks like you're sending, but your rig never engages. There's no power going out. How many of you have had that happen? Raise your hand. Yeah, I could see you all. That happened to me a lot. One of the common areas that I found is when using FL rig in there is that if this is enabled right up in here to automatically start, auto start, and try to get FL rig at the same time, it can be finicky and it can cause a problem. I was just with another ham radio operator this past week, and he had that same problem. We were going through each of these steps, and we got to this one, and this was for his FT891 mobile. It worked perfectly for his FT991 up in his shack. It worked great, but the mobile unit wasn't working right. Well, this was enabled, and because that was enabled, it didn't work. He could get everything working, but he couldn't transmit anything. By simply unchecking that, making sure that FL rig was launched first, everything went away and he was able to engage again. So again, just again, from my own frustrations, this is what I've learned and what others have learned. And again, make sure that the frequency panel and rig match. So for an external sound card within Fldigi, you're going to probably see data U. And if you're using an internal sound card, it should be packet or PKT USB. So those are the ones that you need to be looking at associated with it. And again, back to the last section, make sure that your rig is also in upper sideband data. So if you get all that done, it should work. So now let's talk about some Fldigi tips. Now when we look at trying to get your squelch adjustments correctly here, it's an art, I'll be honest with you here, because between different op modes, it could matter as to what this distance may work well with FSQ versus, PSK31 or whatever mode that you're using. It can vary. So again, get used to being able to adjust this. Now for really, really weak signals, you can just turn the squelch off and deal with the garbage and kind of sort through all of that. Otherwise, if you work with the squelch control, get used to adjusting this. As far as the transmit audio levels that are set for your ALC, adjust it either in your rig or there's a control down here. These are by single digits, and these are by, like 0.1, 0.2, and this would be like an increase of 4, 5, 6, whatever you see down in here. So again, area that you need to work on is right in here. Now, the audio input should always be green. And sometimes I notice it'll fluctuate to yellow, which means I'm borderlining on getting toward overdrive. And in order to be able to prevent overdrive, I really need to back that off. So how do you back off on that? Well, if you remember when we talked about the speaker level earlier in this video, well, I adjusted actually in there and adjusting the volume going down, the levels going down, and that actually helps prevent the overdrive. So again, ham radio is an art. There is some skill required. It's not set it and forget it whatsoever. So again, make sure you go back to your speaker setting, the level, adjust it, and that should make a difference on it. Also note, you're going to get a high SWR from an antenna. It's going to cause an issue. It is. I've had it where my SWR was too high and it actually went to black. So high SWR is not compatible too well with this digital mode with Fldigi on here. So just again, a few thoughts. So why don't we just stop here and go ahead and launch Fldigi and let me run through a few more things. Now when we open up Fldigi, a lot of times the first thing I want to do is go to configure dialog, and make sure that my devices are showing up correctly. Again, mysteriously, these will change on you for no explained reason. Both of them have to be set. One of them usually gets changed. I don't know why that happens, but if you're having issues, first thing to do is check your sound card devices and make sure that it's showing correctly. Also, I always check my rig, and I use for an internal sound card, I use HandLib. And here's the settings for the ICOM 7300 that work perfectly for me. Again, your own COM port, obviously, that is in here. And always hit save whenever you make changes, because if you don't, it's not going to remember it. So get in the habit of anytime you change screens to go ahead and hit the save on it. For the RSID that's enabled up in here, a couple settings that take place in here. One is under, let's see, IDs and RSID right in here. You want to make sure these three boxes are checked. You can hit the pause if you want to do it, then hit the save. And then you have to go under miscellaneous, and you have to go under sweet spot and make sure this is not checked right in here. Leave that blank, hit save and close. And if you check on the RxID, and I explained all that in another video, it's a great tool to have. The tune button up here, this is when you're setting your ALC functions. You're going to go ahead and hit the tune. Your rig should engage. And at that point, I can work on my rig to make sure I can adjust the ALC, as well as I can do it down in here. So I can actually go here and look at my ALC to try to get it a little bit lower. And there I just dropped it, to 1/3 on it. Again, as I mentioned, we can also talk about, trying to go into the sound card. So if you look, right in here, you can see this is actually transmitting. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. That should be no longer transmitting. If you're using, just a general thought, if you really want to find out and see if your rig is working, I use the PSK 31, which is really the BPSK 31. And when I see that, all I have to do is just click onto here, and my offset automatically locks onto it, and it should be able to start reading it. But this is where you're going to find a lot of activity. You can test your equipment. You'll see a lot of people doing CQs any time of the day that actually this goes on. If there's one last thing I want to show you, a tip in here is under this little book right in here, I like to put in, I pre-program my frequency. So I could take that frequency, save it by hitting the plus sign. It's going to save not only the frequency, it's going to save the op mode. And this op mode, if we look down here at the bottom, is a BPSK 31, and it's saving it. And if I want to take any of these bands and use it, let me just scroll down here through here. And that's a 14070 is a very popular band. But let's just show you, for example, if I wanted to go to 110, and I'm going to use, let's see, Thor at 110 here. All I have to do is highlight that, and I just kind of move that over. Rig kicks in, and now I'm operating on Thor. And I go here for 14. If I want even 1470, but I want to use Contestia, for example, I can go ahead and hit that. And now all of a sudden I have that set up. So I don't have to sit there with my rig dialing it. This is how you get the most common frequencies in. You just simply put it in through your rig and hit the plus sign after you pick the op mode that you want and the format speed that you want, and it saves it. And you notice I can have multiple ones. So I've got, 14070, Contestia 850 versus BPSK 125. Again, great time saver tip. If you're going to be using this a lot, know how to use the list, and that's how that shows in here. So that brings it over. That takes it off the list. That adds it to the list, and this deletes the whole list, which you don't want to do. So hopefully that's enough information for now. If you want more, you can go back to one of the other videos that are listed below. And again, I'll just show you here. I bet you if I go to BSK 31, let me just try this here. I'm on Contestia. I'm going to go there. Go back over, and I'm going to highlight this. You notice that my offset now lined up, and signal just ended. But simply, this is a great place for practicing and seeing if your equipment works. Now it's coming back again. So hopefully this is of value to you. So let's just kind of get back to the summary and wrap it up. So in summary, make sure your baud rate matches the rig, the software, and within the device manager settings that I showed you earlier in the video. Consider using a device cleanup tool like I did. It just really helped a lot. It got rid of a lot of the garbage, especially in this drop-down list. You're not seeing a list of like maybe 30 or 40 in there to try to pick out the the USB audio codec, for example. It's a lot easier on it. Plus, I'm not getting as much conflict with my device drivers. Because I've added and removed so many of them at different times. It just cleans it up, makes it simple. Sound card settings, you're going to probably more often go into the speaker levels to try to adjust it versus the microphone levels. But the speaker levels, make sure you know how to do that, because that is a great tip in order to operate this more effectively. Rig, make sure your control data settings are correct. You can adjust the ALC, hit the tune button and Fldigi, and then go ahead and with the adjustment at the bottom that I showed you on the right-hand corner, make the adjustment to get a good ALC. You'll get a better performance out of it. Check your cables. Make sure you don't have cheap, bad cables. And also, just, a common tip I use is I have no noise up in my shack. I put ferrite bead cables on anything that's near my rig, all my computer cords, power cords, connection cables. All of that is just covered with ferrite beads, and it really makes a big difference on it. As far as FLDigi itself, make sure underneath the frequency panel that it's showing USB data, or again, that's for internal sound cards. Typically for an external sound card, it's the packet USB. And make sure your rig didn't change. You may have started out at USB data. Just keep an eye on it. If it changed, you're going to have to go back and adjust it. Under sound, under devices, I always go in there and I check to make sure that the both settings are correct. They will mysteriously change on me. It'll show up as my desktop speakers, for example, in one of the two settings. And I have to change it. That's a common failure point that you did not initiate. So if you're having problems, check that out. Make sure your rig control works. If you're having issues on that, go back in. Could be a COM port issue. COM ports could change. And if you're using an external sound card, make sure you're using the enhanced COM port number that you need to use. Within FLDigi, make sure that you don't enable with an auto launch for both FLDigi and Fldigi to operate at the same time. Launch FLDigi first, and then have a clean launch of Fldigi. So hopefully these are some good suggestions that should help you. If you have any other problems, go ahead and reach out and email me at hamradiomadesimple@gmail.com, and I'll see if I can brainstorm with you and get your system up and running. So this is MJ, callsign KW3KW, asking that you would hit the like and the subscribe button. If you stayed this far, you really have to. I appreciate that. With Ham Radio Made Simple, thanking you for watching this video. Out.